Module 57 and 58. Before we left for break, I gave you this piece of paper that talked about market structures. As you can see on this piece of paper, the top left has got market structure, like what type of a business this is going to be or how that business is going to act. So when you look at the top one, perfect competition is the first one that we're going to look at. The second one that we'll look at as we get into this section will be monopoly, actually. So we're going to do the two ends first, partly because perfect competition is where there's lots and lots of people in a non-differentiated market. So you'll be able to kind of see how that looks. Agricultural products are going to be a good example of that. When you look at monopoly, monopoly will be the total opposite, where there's only one firm that can operate in that. And sometimes you'll see something like copyright law or patents might give you that option of a monopoly today. Sometimes natural monopolies will happen, where it'll be something like the power company. It's actually cheaper for us to have the power company exist as one company rather than have multiple people trying to compete for that. So you're going to fill in this chart. You can look in your textbook, read that. I don't know if there's anything too crazy in there other than when you get to that oligopoly part, they do have a little test to see an oligopoly. It's called the Herfmann-Hochschild index. You can look at that if you want. We will cover it when we do oligopolies, but I just do it in brief. But it's kind of in this section where it talks about, hey, when firms get together, how do governments allow them to merge versus saying, no, if you merge together, you'd be too big and you'd have monopoly power. If you want, I had my answer sheet. I can put that one in here for you. And when you look at that, you can kind of just pause the video and fill that in if you want. I'll get rid of me down here. And you can kind of see what we're talking about. Perfect competition has lots of firms. Monopoly has one firm. When you look at ease of entry, perfect competition, it's super easy to get in, whereas monopoly, impossible to get in. When you look at things like non-price competition, that would be things like, well, what else can that particular company do or that particular good other than compete on price? Sometimes things like a warranty, or sometimes if they can offer something in addition, they kind of can compete on that, even though the product's almost exactly the same to some degree. That's a monopolistically competitive firms have that sometimes, or often, I should say. And if you look at examples, perfect competition, probably the best example is agriculture. Wheat is wheat is wheat, milk is milk is milk. If you can't tell the difference because it's just going to get turned into something else, then that's our perfectly competitive firms. They kind of just do all the same thing, and then they can't really set the price because they have to take the market price as theirs, whatever that might be. When you look at monopolistic competition, anything retail is going to fall under monopolistically competitive firms. Things that have a logo, we'll talk about that when we get there. And an oligopoly, because there's only a couple of these typically in the market, we'll look at like a duopoly where there's only two in a market. Things like car companies, soft drink companies, people that kind of do, they control the market because there's only a few people in there. The airline industry would be a really good example. They can kind of set price a little bit, or kind of sometimes they can collude with one another to be able to get that price. And then last but not least, a monopoly. Sometimes people will say like a rural gas station could act as a monopoly. We tend to break up monopolies because they harm consumers. But when you look at it, a monopoly is every once in a while will allow them to exist. For example, the power company. So fill that one in. It's a good one to have. And then we're going to move into the very first one, which is our perfectly competitive market, which is Module 58. So in Module 58 today, as you look at it, a couple things. The first one is going to be, we're always going to produce where MR equals MC. That is profit maximizing all the time. You did that in the last unit a little bit where you're trying to find, hey, how does this work? Oh, my per unit revenue equals my per unit cost is going to give me the most profit overall. That's going to apply to every firm that we're talking about. In perfect competition specifically, we're going to have this acronym called Mr. DARP. Why? Well, we found out the last time that price was equal to marginal revenue. Well, if price is equal to marginal revenue, then what we also can see out of this is that's going to be where our demand curve hits. So if our demand is going to be equal to our marginal revenue, and our marginal revenue is equal to our price, we start seeing how this acronym develops. And average revenue is simply total revenue divided by quantity. That is also going to be the same in perfect competition. So we're going to see this acronym of Mr. DARP. Marginal revenue, demand, average revenue, price are all going to be the same in perfect competition. So profit maximizing will occur where MC equals MR, which also means it'll occur where MC equals P for price. How do we graph that? Well, it's the same graph that we had before. This line of our marginal revenue comes across, but this line is now my marginal revenue, my price, my average revenue, my demand. So this is my Mr. DARP line. He's this horizontal line coming across. My marginal cost still is Nike swoosh shape, so you can see it there. And where my Mr. DARP line crosses my marginal cost line, that is MC equals MR. That is going to be my profit maximizing point. In here, 5 units, price $18. Okay, that's where you're going to go. So always go there first, MC equals MR. When you're calculating the profit then, all we do to get profit, and we did this the last time, total revenue minus total costs, right? If your total revenue is greater than your total cost, it's positive. Total revenue less than total cost, sometimes they'll say negative profit, sometimes they'll say loss. It's weird saying negative profit. Profit per unit, that's my price if it's greater than my average total cost or my price is less than average total cost. If my price equals my average total cost, this is the spot where we want to be because that's a normal profit. It means I can't do any better with the skills that I have, with the resources that I have. That would be Module 58. See you next time.